Well, thank you all so much for joining us today for Kentucky Spin's Lunch Shop webinar series on collaborative communication. We are so happy that you are with us today. I'm going to go over a little bit of housekeeping before we get started, but I want to tell you, of course, we're all working from home, or a lot of us are working from home, and you may hear my dogs bark, you may hear my child come in, so I'm just wanting to warn you now that life happens, and I just want to let you know it never fails. It seems like my dogs bark on every single one. But we just want to thank you for joining us today. We have a great webinar for you. And so we're going to get started with just a little bit of housekeeping. On your right-hand side of your screen should be your dashboard, and you will see a box that says questions. If you drop down that box, you can type a question in, and I'll be monitoring those throughout our presentation today, and be happy to answer those for you as we go along through the presentation. Also, you will see a box that says, or a drop-down box that says handouts, and under that you will see 5 handouts we have provided for you. One is the PowerPoint from the presentation, and we also have 4 additional handouts in regard to communication that we think are very, very important that you will get some great benefit from. I will let you know, though, we will follow up this afternoon with an email, which will also have those links to the handouts in case you don't have time to download them during the presentation. So before we get started, I want to tell you just a little bit about Kentucky SPIN, which is Kentucky Special Parent Involvement Network. We are the Parent Training and Information Center for the state of Kentucky, and we have been since 1988. And that's when Kentucky first received the PTI funding. And so we're very excited that we are the Parent Training and Information Center for Kentucky. What we do is we provide information and support for children and youth with all types of disabilities, birth through age 26, their parents, families, and professionals. And that's just really, really important. One of the things we do not do, though, is we do not act as attorneys. But however, we empower families to effectively advocate for their children, and we provide peer support to help families access needed information and resources. The great thing about Kentucky SPIN staff is we are all family members who have a child with an intellectual developmental disability, we have a sibling, or we have a disability ourselves. I have a 24-year-old son with an intellectual disability, so I've been involved in special education for many, many years. And our speaker today, who is also our training coordinator for Kentucky SPIN, Kelly Smith, she also has an adult son with a disability. So we bring that professional parent perspective, and so we think that's a really good tool that we can provide families. So without further ado, I'm going to have Kelly join us now, and she is going to be doing the presentation. But remember, if you have a question, just type it in the question box. Kelly will pause throughout if we need to answer any questions. And so, Kelly, can you hear me?
I can.
All right. You're free to go.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. As Stella said, I'm Kelly Smith. I'm the training coordinator for Kentucky SPIN. I've been with Kentucky SPIN for almost 5 years now. I love it. It is a dream come true to be able to work in an environment that I previously worked in and did not get paid. So it was a win-win for me, and I'm super happy to be here. As Stella said, I have a 23-year-old son who has a traumatic brain injury, and so we have been through lots and lots of things together. We've experienced lots of hills and lots of valleys. So I hope to use kind of some of our personal stories as well as the information in this presentation to kind of help you understand things a little more clearly and the importance of collaborative communication. So what do we mean when we say collaborative communication? Overall, the definition of collaborative communication is to work jointly with others while effectively expressing ideas. So you should always be working together, and then jointly and effectively expressing those ideas. Lots of people think that communication is very one-sided, and that's going to be a large topic of this workshop. So the foundation to all good communication can be summed up in this one quote. First, seek to understand, then to be understood. Dr. Covey is the author of several books, which includes the international bestseller, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And I love that quote. When we are communicating with someone, our goal should be to understand their perspective and what they're saying, and then to help them understand our perspective and what we're saying to them. So you can set the tone of a meeting or a conversation before you ever speak a word. The way you approach someone and the situation can have a huge impact on the outcome. An example might be if you say kind things, but you roll your eyes. If any of us have teenagers, we understand that. Yes, mother, with a big fat eye roll. And so you don't really hear the words that are being said when their face or the person you're speaking to's body is saying something completely different. So what you know is the words that are coming out of their mouth are insincere based on the way their face looks, the faces they're making, or their body language. So approximately 10% of communication of words that are approximately 10% of communication is spoken words. 30% is your tone of voice, and 60% is body language. And so every action, even silence, is a communication. For example, you may think you know what this man is saying. Maybe he's saying, "Oh, I'm amazing," or "Hey, look at me." Without him having to say a word, it's the way he's standing, the way he's presenting himself speaks for itself. So does if someone's standing in front of you and they stomp your foot, roll their eyes, cross their arms. Like I say, every action is communication. So for effective communication, you want to listen twice as much as you talk. And I know we've probably all heard this our entire lives. And throughout our lives, we're usually taught that communication is 50-50. First you talk, then I talk, then you talk again, then I talk again, and back and forth and back and forth. But when we're doing that, what's happening is while you're talking, I'm thinking about how am I going to respond to that, or that reminds me of this, or don't forget to go to the grocery store. So I'm not really listening to what that person is saying. I'm thinking about what I'm going to say next. That is not having communication with someone. That's thinking, not listening. So communication is not just about talking. It's really about paying attention to what the other person is saying, focusing on the conversation, and we call that active listening. So there are some elements of active listening, and as you can see here, the very first element is to be attentive. People are not actively listening when they jump to conclusions about what the other person really means, or maybe become judgmental because they don't agree with that person saying. And if you find yourself kind of shutting down in that situation, try to overcome that and keep listening. Try to continue to give your attention so that you can be sure that you haven't misunderstood the situation. And one way of making sure that you understand what the person means is to repeat it back to them in your own words or paraphrase. So don't go overboard, but say, okay, so what I hear you saying is this. Or, okay, so I understand that you're telling me this. And sometimes I even have to say, if someone's talking about something, sometimes I've had to butt in and say, I need you to slow down and explain it to me like I'm a 6-year-old. Because if a 6-year-old can understand it, I should be able to, hopefully. And sometimes I just need someone to break things down for me because I don't want to misunderstand and I don't want to fight with someone over something that I've misunderstood. You also need to be aware not only of their body language, but also of your own. Pay attention to your posture and facial expressions. Turn towards the person and make eye contact. In certain cultures, eye contact, though, could be considered rude, so you want to, kind of just be aware of your surroundings. And like right now, virtually, it's really hard to make eye contact with anyone, right? Because we're really just looking at a computer screen. So Stella has sent something out a while back, and it was just tips on hosting webinars or something. And I really struggle to look into my camera when I'm talking. I want to look at my screen at their faces. So when they see me on their screen, I'm not looking at them. I'm looking kind of down. So something that Stella had shared with us said, to place something like tape something to the back of your computer or whatever so that you look at that thing, like a little, picture of an audience, or maybe it's just a flag or something, but something for you to look at so that you have something to focus on rather than the dot on that camera, because we tend to draw away from that. So I thought that was an excellent, excellent idea. Some people probably couldn't care less, but that was just mind-blowing to me because I never thought to do that, to give myself that visual. So it does work, and I do recommend it. So the next couple of slides are just some little cartoons. This, of course, you see a man in a newspaper, and the wife is telling him, you can stop saying, I stopped talking to you an hour ago. So obviously, he was just engaging in, patterns. She's talking, and he's just like, So, and that happens. That unfortunately happens a lot at my house, but it's usually reversed. It's usually my husband is talking and I'm the one going, because I have a million other things on my mind. Not that he's not busy. Let me insert that. But I have a lot going on in my mind, and so I'm not always as attentive as I should be. And it often will cause a problem between us. Which kind of relates to the very next slide, where you've got these two guys laying on a beach, and one says, I'm sorry, were you talking to me? Because the other one literally was not responding or paying any attention, maybe wasn't looking at him, making eye contact with him. And we don't know if people are listening. I may say something to my daughter, and I'll say, why are you ignoring me? And she'll say, I'm not ignoring you. Well, if she doesn't look at me or doesn't respond to me when I speak, I assume that she can't hear me. And I think we all probably, or the majority of us, feel the same way. So, opinions and perspectives. Collaborative communication values and respects the opinions, perspectives, and rights of both parties. Two heads are better than one. That's a thing we hear often. And multiple perspectives help in problem solving and brainstorming options. When we discuss the rights of both parties, that goes back to respect. In general courtesy, not just legal rights, but the right to speak without interruption, the right to disagree, and the right to ask questions. If we expect to be respected, then we have to first give respect. So collaborative communication encourages both parents and professionals to express honest feelings, promote mutual respect, allow both discussion and disagreement, respect cultural differences while remaining child-focused. And so something I want to touch on about collaborative communication, allowing honest feelings and discussion as well as disagreement. I want to insert, and this may even be included later in this presentation, it's okay to change your mind. If you walk in to a meeting, or if you sit down for a conversation that needs to be had and you know that you're on different sides of the table, so to speak, it's okay for the other person to really compel you to see their side and for you to change your mind. Lots of times people let pride get in the way of changing their mind. Lots of times people let pride get in the way of collaboratively communicating with someone. So I just strongly encourage you that to keep in mind that collaborative communication allows for both discussion and disagreement while respecting each other and their honest feelings. Do we have any questions right now, Stella?
I don't see any questions right now. I don't even think I introduced myself at the beginning. I'm Stella Beard. You've said my name a couple of times, but I think I just jumped right into getting the lunch shop going. But no, we don't have any questions right now. But just as a reminder to everyone, if you do have anything, go ahead and type them in the question box, and Kelly will be happy to answer them.
Or if you have any comments. I'm sure the majority of us have some very interesting stories that we can tell, whether that is when we're wearing our parent hats and it's, communication with staff or doctors or nurses or whatever the case may be, or if you're a professional and you struggle to talk to parents. And we've had lots of workshops where teachers, they want to communicate with the parents of their students, and it's very hard to do that. So if you have any stories that you would like to contribute in the chat box or in the question box, either or, I would love to hear them. And I would love to hear if it's an issue that you had, how you overcame it, which we're also going to be talking about here in just a little bit. So, partnership. Partnership is a relationship between individuals or groups that is characterized by mutual cooperation and responsibility as for the achievement of a specified goal. As parents, educators, and professionals that work with individuals with disabilities, our goal is the same: to help the children or young adults or adults have successful outcomes. The best outcomes occur when parents, the educators, and the individuals that work with them can truly be partners in achieving that goal. And so we have to remember that communication between the parents and professionals is critical to the success of that child, young adult, or adult with a disability. So keeping the child as the main focus will ensure the best possible outcome. We can't let personality differences deter us from developing strong partnerships. Okay, so I'm going to insert a story here about some barriers to communication. Probably 10, 12 years ago, I had been ordered, my son, he actually has, let me back up, he has actually had 3 brain injuries in his lifetime. And 2 were relatively close together. 1 was 15 years later. So after his 3rd brain injury, he was placed on a medication that made him extremely violent. And that is not his character, his character at all. He's real quiet and laid back. He's the most easygoing guy in the whole world. And he was just, violent. There's no other word to describe it. This medication really completely changed who he was. And I made a choice as a parent to stop giving him that medication after about a month, I guess. And we went back at the same time that he was prescribed this medication. We were also ordered to go to Lexington and have an MRI and an EEG. So we, we do this. We go to Lexington. We do the MRI and the EEG. We get the meds. We stop the meds a month later. So 3 months after that initial visit, we go back for a follow-up, right? So I get there, and they ask how the medicine's doing. I told them that I stopped it. Now, he hadn't had any seizures or anything like that. I told them that I stopped it. They were livid. The doctor was very upset. But the nurse was so upset with me. She was beyond furious. And she said a few things, and I, kept my cool a little bit. As much as I could, I kept my cool. I go on throughout our appointment, and it comes time to discuss the MRI and EEG results. And she informs me that there is no record of me taking him for those tests. And I said, I don't really know what to tell you. I took him. And she says, well, did they give you anything? And I said, no, they didn't. Said I had to wait for a while, for the EEG because they only had one machine and it was down in the ER, and we went back and forth for a while. And then I hear her telling, and she was kind of standoffish, and I was kind of defensive, I guess. But then I hear her through the door, her and the doctor step out, and I hear her through the door telling the doctor that they need to call social services because I was I was medically neglecting my son. Well, I went nuts. Nut is a huge understatement. My son was literally terrified, not because of the fight that was breaking out, but because he thought he was going to be stranded. He didn't know how he was going to get home. So we, and we had it out. We had it out. It was ugly. It was very, very ugly. And she had to walk away, and I was trying to calm down, and this other nurse comes in, and he says, did they give you anything? Do you have anything that can help you here? And it just so happens that when they had referred me, I thought the appointment was at UK, but it wasn't. It was at Good Sam. And so I had sent an email to UK thanking them for their shuttle bus and explained to them that I would have missed my son's appointment for his EEG had it not been there, and that I was just, ever so grateful. And I'm not saying that you have to do that. I'm saying that we had a really, really hard time. So as we're talking about barriers to communication, it was very, very hard when that nurse came back in for me to, not go nuts again. That was a huge barrier in our communication. So luckily, because I had sent that email, that kept social services off our backs that day. But nonetheless, there was this huge, big, fat elephant in the room at that point, right? So some of the things that can cause barriers to communication are negative history, emotional responses, jargon and alphabet soup. So if you can't understand what they're saying because they're using their technical terms or their professional terms, we don't have that degree, we haven't been to that school, we don't work there, so we don't know what they're saying. Or if you are fearful or intimidated. And I can honestly say that that day I felt all 1, 2, and 4 of that list. It was crazy. And I didn't ever want to go back. And even though that was a doctor that I loved, and he had always treated my son, and she had literally always been his nurse, I didn't want to go back. So we're going to talk about some tips and strategies, and in this, I will also include, some of the things that I did to help kind of work through that situation. So some tips and strategies are: be prepared before you go. Build up your own confidence by learning all you can before the meeting. Hook up with another parent, do some research, check out a book at the library, find out what kind of workshops are available in your area, or you can always call Kentucky Spin if you have questions. But when you're going in to have a conversation, especially one that is going to be detrimental to your child potentially, you need to be prepared. And then you need to nurture those relationships. You need to call, keep in touch, communicate concerns early. You can even send a card or a note, meet between meetings, or volunteer to help out. So you can't build relationships if you only see someone once a year around the table. You're not going to have a relationship with your child's teacher if you only see them at ARC meetings. It's important to continually keep communication going, especially if you have concerns that you need to share. So just to, kind of reiterate, obviously, prepare yourself and then nurture that relationship, because you want a relationship with these people. They have a relationship with your child, and if someone has a relationship with your child, obviously you want to have a relationship with them. Some other tips and strategies are: set the tone of the meeting. You can bring a picture of your child or ask the team member to share something positive about that child. Bring fudge, bring cookies. People like to eat, the universal icebreaker. And work towards resolving differences of opinion. Now, when I say work towards resolving differences of opinion, sometimes you have to walk away. Sometimes if meetings or emotions get kind of out of control, you may have to walk away for a while. You may have to cool down. So when I left that doctor's appointment with my son, it took me a good long while to calm down. And I had to really, really evaluate and think about some things. Not only was I being accused of neglect, I was also called, a bad mother. I was talked horribly about and to, and it was really, really hard for me to get through that. But when I was able to walk away and kind of step out of that situation, I tried to look at things from her perspective. She had been my son's nurse for years. She knew him, she saw his test results. She saw him when he was first discharged from the hospital. She had watched him grow up. She had seen his struggles. She had seen his successes. And she cared enough for him to stand up to me because she thought I was doing a disservice to him. And so when I looked at things from that perspective, And she looked at things from, my perspective. Well, that's his mom. And obviously she went because she sent this email. I don't know why they haven't sent me the record, but they don't have a record of it. And so when I went back 3 months later, it was awkward, but we were able to work through that. So fast forward 10 years, we have an amazing relationship. Not only do we have a good, personal relationship and professional relationship as far as her being, my son's former nurse, but she has also invited me into her office to help train her staff, and invited me into her office to work with other parents. And that's phenomenal. That was a huge barrier to overcome, but we overcame it, even though it took us getting out of the situation for a minute. So I just wanted to insert that. Sometimes you have to step away, and that's okay. Especially when it comes to our kids. We can get really emotional really quick, and things can get ugly before we know it. The goal is to try not to ever get in that situation, but if it happens, do whatever is necessary to get it under wraps as quickly as possible. And when we're talking about, bringing a picture to the meeting or whatever, ARC meetings can be extremely hard for parents, and I think a lot of the time, the professionals at the table maybe don't see it from our perspective. So our goal is that they would, but it can be very, very hard for us as parents. So starting on a positive note, bringing a picture so that you remember to be child-focused, and starting the meeting with someone saying something good about your child will help you a whole lot when you start hearing about the difficulties. So our next tip is to ask questions the way you want them answered. So, did my son do well today? Yes, your son, yes. Or, yeah, he did good. Or, no, he didn't. Or you can say, how did my son do today? So when they answer that question, it's going to require an explanation of how that day went. So keep in mind to ask questions the way you want them answered. If you're okay with a yes or no, then the first way, did my son do well today, is perfectly fine. But if you want an explanation and you want that open dialogue between the two of you, be sure that you ask it in a way that is going to require an answer. Meaning using closed-ended or open-ended questions. So open-ended questions require an explanation. Closed-ended questions require a short answer, either yes or no. Both are fine, but you want to focus on whatever serves the need that you have. Does anybody have anything that they want to ask or share? We're about to wrap up here in just a few minutes, but I wanted to give you all an opportunity to speak up if you'd like.
I don't see any questions right now, Kelly, but I just wanted to chime in about the importance of, communication that we're all dealing with right now a lot is through a text message. And sometimes that can be very, very misunderstood because, as you said in that one of the first slides, that body language is a huge part of communication. When we text someone, we don't, see that. And so, for example, if I text somebody back, instead of just saying okay and I type K, sometimes I've had a friend even tell me this. She said, whenever you type just K, I think you're upset about something. Well, I'm just in a hurry and I just put K instead of an O before it. So that's like a miscommunication with her. So every time I would do that, she would think I was upset. So it's real important that, especially when we're texting, that we are very, very aware of what we're saying or what we're not saying that could be misunderstood.
I absolutely love that you said that. One of my biggest pet peeves is when my daughter texts me back and says either okay with a period or K or K with a period. That absolutely sends me right over the edge. I will immediately go into, an argument always. I know I should take my own advice. But anyway, me and my kid, and that's how it happens. And I'm like, well, what's your problem? But
Kelly, I'll be sure not to ever send K to you.
It does. It immediately sets me off because I was taught in school that a period means you're ending the conversation. You're ending, you finished. That's it. And so when she says, okay, period, or K, period, oh my goodness, it tears me up. And of course, we all know that they say using caps it means you're yelling. I know lots of young people, especially for young people, they seem to, know that automatically. For the longest time, I used caps so I wouldn't have to, capitalize words that needed to be capitalized. It was nothing about yelling, but, I've had to change that because of the way people perceive, written communication. So absolutely, I'm super happy that you brought that up. And I know lots and lots and lots of communication gets kind of out of hand, and it's all just a misunderstanding because of, either punctuation or lack of punctuation or using caps or taking shortcuts or whatever. So, differences of opinion. Use LUCK. LUCK is an acronym for listen to and restate the other person's opinion. Use a respectful tone. Compromise or change your opinion if necessary. And know and state the reasons for your opinion. It's very important that if you believe strongly in something, that you know and can explain why you feel that way. And lots of times we need to explain so that we can help someone understand our perspective. We may need to explain to them why we feel the way we do about something. And there's no shame in us explaining to them or them needing the explanation. And again, there's also no shame in changing your mind or opinion if necessary. So also, parents, please remember that the people you are working with also care for your child very much. You need to remember that you have such important information, and it's important for you to share that information. Be confident. Your input is valuable, and it completes the big picture. So be comfortable to speak up and share. Remember, that is your baby, and you know them better than anyone. And even if collaboration or communication has not been not so collaborative in the past, you can always change by modeling collaborative communication behaviors. Sometimes it's hard to do the right thing. It's almost always hard for me to do the right thing when someone's being snarky towards me. I tend to want to, stop back. But you can change the tone of a meeting, and I know that. I did it professionally many, many, many times. You have people who are angry, and it's up to you to remain calm and come in the situation, and then they come along. You as a parent can do the exact same thing. You can guide that conversation with your actions and the things that you've learned today. So coming together is a beginning. Working together for a common goal is progress. And good collaborative communication is a success. So I wanted to remind everyone that we have Tuesday Tips webinars every Tuesday at 11 o'clock. That is how you will get the latest information and guidance, especially related to COVID-19, but the topic will continue to vary. And then every Thursday, we have additional webinars on a variety of different topics. You should receive the information on those webinars in the email that you'll receive this afternoon. And then for the most up-to-date information and resources for individuals with disabilities, their families, and professionals during COVID-19, you can visit our COVID webpage. And sign up for the Kentucky SPIN e-news if you haven't already. Just that on a regular basis. We do not sell your email address, and that is the best way to ensure that you stay up to date on everything that not only Kentucky SPIN has going on, but we share a lot of information for a lot of other organizations that are beneficial to you. And if you don't mind, please take a moment when this webinar ends to fill out our evaluation. It's going to pop up automatically, probably in a new window when the webinar ends. And again, if you have any questions or if you have any issues or you need assistance with anything, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. And I appreciate your time, and I thank you all for attending.
Kelly, I want to let them know just really quick about our Tuesday Tips that is going to be next Tuesday on September the 29th. We have a special guest speaker. Her name is Dr. Laura Clark. She's a special education consultant for the Northern Kentucky Educational Cooperative, and she is going to be talking to us about giving us some virtual tips and strategies for families without internet access. So I think that's going to be a really, really good Tuesday Tips. And like Kelly said, you can go on our webinar and register for that. Dr. Clark has been a presenter for us on a couple of other webinars, and she always does an amazing job. So if you have some time and you want to hop on next Tuesday for that, we would really appreciate you joining us. So now you can close up, Kelly.
All right. Well, you all have a great day, and thank you again for joining.